Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Veg Networking Canada, where vegan plant-based companies connect and collaborate. We honor, acknowledge, and respect that we are located on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of many Indigenous peoples of Canada. Today, we have a special guest with us, a champion for the symbiotic relationship between physical wellness and mental wellness, an award-winning feature-length film writer and director, and a serial entrepreneur with a burning passion for animal rights. Veg Networking Canada is pleased to introduce the founder of Bizwell Studio. Welcome, Laurent Goldstein.
Well, thank you very much, Justin, for that introduction. I want to thank you, Sandra and Megan as well, for having me part of your podcast, part of your program. I'm honored to be here.
Well, we are honored to have you here. Thank you so much. Can you tell everybody listening with us who's live and going to be listening later the story of what led you to go vegan?
Well, I've always had a love of animals going back a very long time. And I remember as a kid growing up in France, I remember being really, really shocked to my core when I would walk down a specific street in that town called La Baule on the west coast of France, and walking past a butcher shop. Actually, it was a place that was they were killing rabbits for food, and I would walk by and I would see these rabbits hanging, and it was terrifying me. And I remember another time I was even younger, playing with my friends as a kid, and I found the head of a cow in a garbage can, and that was very traumatic for me. So for very, very early age, I was shocked by the idea of eating animals, even though I kept eating meat for quite a while. I grew up in a family of carnivores. Again, being in France, there is a tradition around that, especially back in the 60s and 70s, obviously. Veganism was not even close to being on the map. But I would say in my early or late 20s, early 30s, I stopped eating red meat and white and chicken. I stopped eating meat, but I was still eating fish, and I had no problem with dairy. Only about 8 years ago, after watching three documentaries in one day, the last one was Earthlings. And literally, that was a life-changing event for me that day. And I remember Earthlings, I watched it at the end. It was close to midnight when I went to bed and I could not fall asleep. And the next day I went vegan. I was going to say cold turkey, but that's that pun. it's it's kind of cold turkey. Literally the next day I was vegan, and I haven't looked back since. So that's like 8 years now. See, the irony is that before I became vegan, before I watched these documentaries, I never made the connection. I didn't think I was actually participating to killing animals because I did not understand how the dairy industry works. These documentaries opened my eyes to how horrific the dairy industry actually is. But I think a lot of people don't know that. So it took me to go on that journey of watching these three films on one day to actually understand it. I think one of them was Cowspiracy, Earthlings was the last one, and I think maybe What the Health was the first one I saw on that day.
Wow, wow. Thank you so much for sharing that story from
Oh,
the shocking visuals at a young
yeah,
age to
uh,
yeah, you don't know what you
never
don't know.
forget. I'll
Yeah.
never forget. That was like traumatic to me. And I can even smell the smell by the store that was killing rabbits. I could even smell it. It's just anyway. It was yeah. So it took me a while, but eventually I got there.
Yep, yep, absolutely. Okay, so switching gears now. We didn't mention it in the intro, but or we did talk about it a little bit, right? Serial entrepreneur. So, that probably means that your entrepreneurial origin start was something quite some time ago. So can you tell us a little bit more about your entrepreneur
Yeah,
spark?
I think probably the spark for that probably came from my dad. My parents were always kind of free spirits. My dad was always thinking outside of the box when it came to business. He was a sales trainer, mentor. So my first business, I started my first business, I was 21 years old. I bought a little printing machine. I was living in France at the time in a town close to the ocean, beautiful place. And I bought a little printing machine that was very innovating at the time, that allowed small businesses like to have small runs of business cards, advertising material, and stationery in small runs. Because at the time, the printers, you had to order like, I don't know, 5,000 business cards. And for a small business, it was not practical, or it was not needed. So I bought that little machine. I remember I set it up in my kitchen area because I was living in a small studio at the time, only one room really. And in the morning, I would go on the road, I would take my car, I would go visit the local businesses in town, and I would show them some samples of my work. I would take orders, fill up an order form, come back home in the evening, like do the work, create the work of the business cards and stationery. A couple of days later, I would deliver the work, write an invoice, collect the money. That was my first really entry into that entrepreneurship world. And it was not easy because I had to do cold calling all the time, and the fear of rejection. But I got over it very quickly. I became very good at it, and I got to actually really enjoy it. Then I went into the music space, which was always my passion. I always had a passion for music, and I opened a record store. So for 3 years, I owned a record store. Then I was hired by Warner Brothers to actually sell their catalog. So I became a sales rep. That didn't last very long, about a year or so. And after that, I started working in sales for the company that actually moved me to Canada because I was one of the top performers out of over 500 salespeople. And they asked me to go to Calgary to open an office in Calgary. I told the owner of the company that in Calgary people speak English, and he said, "Oh, don't worry, Goldstein. It's Canada. Everybody speaks French in Canada." I had English as like a fourth language because I took Latin, German, so French, Latin, German, and English last. And at the time when I was learning English at school, I was more interested in riding my motorcycle and chasing women, girls at the time, I guess. That was kind of more my focus. So I learned my English more, I think, listening to music, the bands of the time, the Doors and the Beatles and all the bands I was crazy about. That's how I learned my English. So I came to Canada to set up an office for that company in Calgary. That was back in the 80s. And I was with that company for about a year. That's the company that um, invented the 1 hour photo finishing mini labs at the time. Back then, long time ago, that's before your time, but people would take photos. They would have to go to a drugstore, give them the roll of film, wait a week to get their photos, their prints back. Well, the company in France invented 1 hour photo finishing, and they created a mini lab that we would sell to businesses that wanted to generate extra income by adding a new service in their business. And so I became the general manager in Canada for that company. But I was there only for a year because I guess I was never meant to work for somebody else. Or there's nothing wrong with that, obviously, but it was never in my DNA. So I learned a lot from that company, and the owner of that company became a mentor for me. He started from nothing, and he built an organization that became bigger than Kodak or Nyoritsu. We had offices in 85 countries. And at the time, back in the 80s, the company owned by one man grew to be over $850 million company. And he's still around. He's 74. He's still very active as an entrepreneur, and he's ranked 450 richest man in the world. So still, he's in the top 500 richest man on the planet. And I had a one-on-one relationship with him. So what I did is I learned a lot, everything pretty much in sales from that company. And after I left, I started my own business. So I identified a couple of products that were coming from France that didn't exist in Canada, and I saw a need or a gap, and I got the rights to import these products. One of them was a deep fryer, a machine to make French fries that was countertop and had no smoke and no odor, which allowed us to sell it to some soup and sandwich places, bingo halls, mom and pop businesses that wanted to offer French fries, um, but without having a big kitchen that, with a hood and ventilation and all of that. So that was a big thing for me. I had a lot of traction with that business. So that's one of the business I started. And then I had other businesses after that, including in 2000, I started a business in the chiropractic profession. That was very a critical moment for me. I developed a software program for chiropractors to help educate the public on health and wellness and chiropractic care while people are in the chiropractic office. So we sold it to over 3,000 clinics all over the world. And I attended hundreds of seminars that were hosted by chiropractors during that time. So I learned a lot. I got inspired by some amazing people during that time. So that's in a nutshell. And after the chiropractic company I owned, I had 40 employees. I was doing about $6 million a year in business. But when the recession of 2009 came, I had to close the company down because we could not get financing for our clients who wanted to buy our software program. So that was the end of it. Um, I was in my early 50s at the time. So that would have been 14 years ago. And I had to bounce back. I mean, that company was going to be my retirement. I lost everything from a financial standpoint. I had to start from less than scratch and come up with something new. And one day, and for 3 months, I didn't know what I was going to do. My wife and I and our two dogs had to get rid of our home, and we moved back on our boat. We were living on our boat in Vancouver because we could not afford anything else. I lost everything. And one day I came, and I remember Jennifer was in the kitchen. I came into the house. We were renting at the time. After we moved out of the boat, we finally rented. And I come in the house and I told her, that's it. I found what we are going to do. We are going to create videos to help small businesses market themselves online. And that was the beginning of Citrus Pie Media Group, which is our video and film production company. The next day, I sold my first video, filmed it to a dry cleaner in town, and filmed it a few days later. And that was the beginning. And today, we have over 1,000 clients. We've shot over 3,000 videos. We've got 35 million views on our main YouTube channel with Citrus Pie. And all of that was starting from literally less than scratch.
Wow. Okay, so you mentioned Citrus Pie at the
Yes.
end, and at the beginning we talked about Bizwell Studio.
Yep.
So feel free to
The connection.
answer this question separately or together, but the question is, where is your brand going in the future?
Well, I mean, so there's two, because I mean, Bizwell Studio is an ongoing. It's Bizwell Studio was actually not my idea. Business Studio was the idea of a businesswoman and artist from Edmonton, who her name is Lisa Levasseur. Lisa is Jerry Levasseur's daughter. Jerry Levasseur is an iconic businessman from Alberta. I would say like a kind of a Jimmy Pattison. He's 90 years old now. he started from nothing back in the late 50s, I would say. He lost his father when he was 17 years old. His father passed away suddenly, and he was left alone, basically. And he started his first business, a little confectionery store in Devon, Alberta, outside of Spruce Grove, Stony Plain, Edmonton, basically, just around Edmonton. And he opened a car dealership, then another car dealership, and finally he built an empire of 12 hotels, resorts, RV dealerships, apartment buildings, equestrian centers, and an amazing guy and very humble. He he developed the town of Jasper. A lot of people don't know that, but the town of Jasper, the tram, and Moline Lake, which is such an iconic, sublime space, he invested. Like he's the one who is a philanthropist who actually put the money in behind all of that and had the vision to develop Jasper. And his first hotel was the Jasper Inn in Jasper. So his daughter approached me. We had produced videos for their company over the years. And his daughter approached me about 3 years ago to ask me if I would do a documentary on the life of Jerry Levasseur in order for them to preserve the history for the younger generation, and also in order for her to raise money for a family trust that she created with the goal of bring money in the family trust, which we raised close to $500,000 with 2 film screenings from the movie we produced for our father, and then giving back the money for the local communities where they have hotels, Jasper, Belmont, Invermere, Red Deer, and so on and so forth. So that was the idea. And Lisa one day came up with me. It says, Laurent, my dad, I learned so much in business from Jerry, from my dad, and you've got quite a diverse business experience as well. It would be awesome to create a platform where we could share the knowledge and invite people on a podcast kind of format that you could interview that would have inspiring stories to tell so that other business owners would learn better ways to run their business, but not just the business, their health, because you cannot be successful in business if you're run down physically, if you're or mentally. Mindset is number one mindset, but you also have to have a physical stamina that allows you to work the long hours that you need to work if you're a business owner. So it's all coming together as a whole. And with Bizwell Studio, I have been looking for athletes, business leaders, writers, authors, uh, and we've got some amazing podcast interviews with big names and people like Dr. John DeMartini, um, Dr. Guy Rickman. I've got a couple of vegan leaders as well. Of course, in our platform, I interviewed a very well-known athlete from Germany. His name is Timo Boll. He's an Olympic table tennis athlete, amazing man with millions and tens of millions of views on his videos on YouTube. So these are the type of people I like to bring in Bizwell. And the idea is, again, to inspire people. Why do I keep talking about inspiring people? Because I think it's not enough to be educated and knowledgeable. There's a ton of information out there on the internet today. It's amazing, really. It's amazing. So people have access to so much information, but I think it's only when we get inspired that we take action. There is, when you're inspired, it creates a new energy, a momentum that fuels you to take action. So that's why I think, um, for me, the goal is to get people inspired. I don't know if that answers your question, Justin, but
Well, that's the nice thing about these conversations. There is no right or wrong answers. And no, that was great. And I will say that the second to last sort of question or conversation starter is centered around inspiration. So we'll kind of come back to that. But for right now, whether that's in film, health and wellness, business, like the question is, what are some transformations or trends that you've noticed or are noticing in your industry?
Well, I mean, things are happening extremely quickly right now. I mean, that is what is the most obvious. So things are moving at an extremely rapid pace. I give you a quick example in the video production space. Before, like 12 years ago, we had built a little handmade helicopter in order to capture footage from the air. That's only 12 years ago. Drones didn't exist. Then drones became available, and at the time, 10 years ago, when the first drones became available, my God, it was a revolution in the video production industry, right? And if you had a drone and you knew how to fly a drone, you would be able to charge quite a bit of money for the drone filming when you would be selling a video. But now everybody and their nephew have a drone. So now as a filmmaker or video producer, you cannot command any kind of money because you're filming with a drone. Everybody takes it for granted. That's just a quick example on in a short period of time, because 10 years in business, well, it used to be that trends would change. I mean, look one example, the yellow pages. The yellow pages were around for what? Decades. And they never changed. People had to be in the yellow pages. Well, now, of course, that's long gone. But it lasted a very long time. So today things are happening and changing extremely fast. So what it means you have to be flexible to adapt. So you have to have a flexibility of physiology and the way you think as well. That is extremely important, to have that flexibility in order to adapt. So I would say the most important change that we see is that more and more people have easy access to technology, and now with AI, it's even more important, because now, a lot of people are thinking, well, should I hire a writer for my business or should I use AI? I mean, of course, you should hire a writer, but some people would question, maybe I don't need to, so that's a big change. AI is a huge change. So again, it's you need to be aware of it, and you need to be watching for the trends. As an entrepreneur, you have to have the ability to adapt and the flexibility to adapt very quickly.
Yeah. So in terms of giving back or charity, the question sort of is, do your organizations give back in any form of charity? Do you personally? Is it something you've done in the past, doing currently, or planning to do in the future? What does that look like when I say giving back or charity?
Oh, yes. So let me, as far as the vegan community, which is so dear to my heart, um, I one of my ways of giving back has been, for example, to produce a 7-minute video mini documentary at no charge to promote the vegan community in Vancouver. So I created a video which has, I think, 35,000 views so far, or something like that, um, called Vancouver the Vegan Mecca. And what I did with my crew for a week, we went around all the vegan restaurants. We went around, we interviewed the leaders in Vancouver, like Jason, with vegan supply and meat, and I filmed. Um, Unfortunately, some of these places since have disappeared. It's very sad. Kind Cafe is an example that comes to mind, and I love that place. And a couple of others. There's unfortunately more that have gone away very, very recently. So that was one of my ways of, hey, let's help put the vegan community from Vancouver on the map by investing in creating a mini documentary that they will share, that they'll be able to put on their website. So that was one of my way. I have been active with some giving back to some rescue farms. I'm big on rescue, like really big on rescue farms. I think it's amazing what they do. I've been going on marches, marching with some groups to promote veganism. Um, this is really the scope of what I've done so far. Um, but I encourage, of course, anybody to donate and participate in any activity that would help further the cause of veganism.
Yeah, it sounds like those little mini documentaries you were talking about would be really great for like a sanctuary or an animal rescue. Or we've even had guests on from out in Toronto from Animal Justice and their legal fight for animals. Just thinking when I'm hearing
Fantastic.
you saying what you're saying, that would be really valuable asset material for those organizations. And not to put you on the spot too much, but are there any rescues that come to mind or sanctuaries that come to mind?
No Whales in Captivity is an organization. No Whales in Captivity is an organization I donated money to, and I was quite active in helping um, the woman who started that organization, Annalisa Sorg. I was really a big supporter of hers. Um, Otherwise, no name really comes to mind right now. But this is an area that I'm quite passionate about, especially I would say the rescue farms for sure, because these people, it costs a lot of money, and it's not just that. It's they need not just money, but they need people to go there and lend hands to actually help them care of the take care of the animals, greet the people who come on these rescue farms. So yes, so this is something that I'd like to do more in the future. My life is because I've got so many areas of activity that my life has been extremely busy and hectic at times. So, I'd like to do more and I will, but that's the extent of it right now.
Excellent, excellent. All right. So earlier on, you mentioned Earthlings, Cowspiracy, and What the Health. Feel free to answer this question deeper on those or in a similar vein, or from a different, you can answer it, of course, from a different way too, in terms of business or wellness or whatever you want. But the question is, what are some books, podcasts, apps, or other resources that you would recommend to business owners or entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so I am big on podcasts because I mean, books, of course, are amazing. And what is amazing about a book is actually to have the physical object is something that is you can't really replace that. So books definitely are here to stay. The way I consume information is more through videos, obviously YouTube and podcast. Um, and I look for people who inspire me and people who think outside the box. So one of the main leaders in the space of healthcare and business, because again, there's a connection, is his name is Dr. Donny Epstein. And Donny Epstein is he's really a genius. He's a visionary. Um, he's a chiropractor initially. That's how I connected with him 25 years ago. He still is the personal chiropractor of Tony Robbins. And and Tony Robbins, there are videos of Tony Robbins where he says that Donny Epstein is the greatest visionary in healthcare today. So a lot of the principles that Tony Robbins teaches at his events actually come from Donny Epstein. So Donny Epstein has written several books, and he has an organization called AP Energetics, and he just wrote a book. I think the book is called The Power of Seekers. So he's all about seekers, people who are actually searching for something greater in life. And with his principles with AP Energetics, it's about tapping into new sources of energies that allow you to eventually reorganize or organize your entire life. And it is mind changing. It really is. So I highly recommend you check out Donny Epstein, AP Energetics. So that's one. Another one that has been hugely inspiring for me is Dr. Bruce Lipton, The Biology of Belief. Um, when I saw Dr. Bruce Lipton first, I saw him back in 2003 or 2004 at a chiropractic college in California, Life West University. He was giving a lecture there, and I didn't know who he was at the time. And literally, I heard that talk and my jaw dropped on the floor. Like I had a life-changing experience. One of these times when you hear somebody or you talk and you say, "Oh my God," it changed my entire perspective on life. So the biology of belief, Dr. Bruce Lipton, and how our thoughts actually control our life at every single level, including health at a cellular level. What's interesting with Bruce Lipton is a biologist. And back in the late 80s, early 90s, he was studying stem cells in petri dishes. So he's studying stem cells before anybody was doing it. And he realized that actually what conditions what the cells become and how our cellular biology evolve is actually coming from the environment of the cells, the environment that they are in. If you change the environment, you change what the cell becomes. He saw that in the petri dishes, but in the human body, what controls the environment? The cells are in the blood, in our blood. What controls the chemistry of our blood? The brain. Our thoughts control the chemistry of the blood. By changing your thoughts, you change your chemistry, you change all the outcomes in your life. So Dr. Bruce Lipton, The Biology of Belief, hugely influential. I have another person that I think is amazing as well. And she has a fantastic podcast. Her name is Brandy Gilmore. I discovered her TED Talk. Brandy Gilmore has a phenomenal TED Talk, a very inspiring story. She was an athlete in her 20s, a martial arts athlete. She fell one day and chain reaction happened. Her health, she lost her health. She was weighing like 90 pounds. She was in a wheelchair. She was on the verge of death. And she was going from specialist to specialist to specialist. Nobody could help her. So she decided that she had to to do it on her own because she had suicide thoughts. Nobody could help her. There was no, even she was trying even experimental treatments, and even then they could not help her. So she thought, okay, well, maybe I just need to think positive thoughts and maybe I'll get my health back. Again, she was in her early 30s, and let's not forget she was an athlete before. And that didn't work. Then she started reflecting on emotions. And she started reflecting on the fact that emotions actually affect our health in a sense, like, well, I mean, a simple thing. There is a connection between emotion and a physiological response. If you're afraid, you're scared, you may have a pit in your stomach. If you're ashamed, you might turn red. That's a physiological response to an emotion. So she started studying these emotions more and more. Then she started thinking, wait a minute, that means that if I can change my emotional state, then I should be able to positively impact my physiology by simply changing my emotional state. And then she started doing that. She got out of the wheelchair and she's regained her health 100%. And now she lectures all over the world. She's in my movie on a scale of 1 to 10. She just wrote a book that's just being released on Amazon. And she's phenomenal. And she has a podcast and she helps business owners. She helps business owners again because the business is an extension of your life and who you are. And again, by changing your emotions, you can change the entire culture in your business and you can change the outcome. I'm a fan of Dave Asprey, because of what he's done in that biohacking space, being one of the leaders in that biohacking space, which I'm quite interested in, pushing the boundaries, staying young longer, uh, kind of fighting against, well, you can't really fight against the aging process, but you can find ways to mitigate the aging process. Sorry, sorry, I had a call coming in. I apologize. I'm actually on my um, hotspot. That's how I can connect. So sorry about that. So Brandy Gilmore is also a very big one. Dave Asprey. And finally, I would like to mention Dr. Guy Rickman, who is also a chiropractor, who was the president of Palmer Chiropractic College, that's a leading school in chiropractic, then became the president of Life University. And he wrote a book called Making Your Life Extraordinary. And that book was very important for me. He's all about uh, raising the bar in your life and having an extraordinary experience in life. So these are some of the names of the people who come to mind.
Wow, thank you. So that was a that was a nice mixture of providing some resources as well as, I think, letting us know sources of inspiration for you. And that's the next question, is about inspiration. Earlier on, you mentioned, I think you said, inspiration essentially means being motivated to have action. It means momentum. But with that being said, like when you hear the word inspiration, we've had guests do what you did a little bit there, talk about individuals or organizations that inspire them, and then others have talked about more philosophically, what does inspiration mean? Is it internal, external? How do you source it? All of that stuff. So when I say inspiration, what comes to mind?
I love it the way you phrase it, because yes, you could look at inspiration in so many different ways. So the first thing that comes to mind for me is the connection with veganism. I think when you are true to your values and when you try to live, and nobody is perfect. I'm far from being perfect, and sometimes I stray from my values. But one of my values, and that is very dear to my heart and soul, is taking care of the animals, caring for animals, not doing harm. So when you actually act according to your values, that is inspiring. And also, without even having to talk about it, really, the fact that you are like that, it will inspire others to also maybe make some changes, positive changes. So inspiration is something that you have to find deep inside of you. What is it when you're inspired? I'll give you an example. You're exhausted. You're coming home, it's late, you've worked all day, you're exhausted, but suddenly a friend calls you and there's a very exciting event happening tonight. And it's an event maybe around veganism, and some amazing people are there. There's going to be food and great food and music and all of that. And you're tired. They say, hey, yeah, you should come. And you decide to go, right? And you get there and you're amongst your peers and you feel a great energy. You're not tired anymore. You have a full burst of energy. Why? Because you're inspired to be there. So inspiration is a fuel for anything you do. If you're inspired, you're going to find energy even if you only slept 2 hours that night. That's the way I look at it. So what inspires me? Well, because of my career in chiropractic, I had to attend, literally, I would be attending a seminar, a conference every weekend, pretty much, usually in the US, but in Canada, I would be flying every weekend somewhere else to another city, another state, another province. And at these conferences, they would bring leaders, speakers, keynote speakers. And I heard some people who really blew me away. Sorry again. Ah. I'm sorry, there's no way I cannot put it on airplane mode because I would not get a connection. So, um, so people have inspired me, and this is why it's so important for business owners to have a mentor. That is super important. But also, I find inspiration in what other people are doing. I am inspired. I am inspired when people, for example, do things very late in their life that they've always wanted to do, and they keep doing it even though other people are telling them they're too old to do it, as an example, or because of a health condition they should not be able to do what they love to do. So, and people are still doing things that they love to do even though they've been told they're not supposed to or they're too old to do it. That inspires me. And I am inspired by nature, being in nature, and by specific activity. Practicing my sport is very inspiring for me. Boating and the connection with nature that way is very inspiring for me. So yeah, you can find inspiration in many different ways, but these are some of the ideas that come to mind.
Yeah, very interesting framing of inspiration being fuel. And I think a lot of people, myself included, may or may not have thought about that, but it's intuitive in when you hear it that way and it lands. It's very intuitive. So the last question for you, Laurent, is you've talked about it here, and I wrote it down earlier on mentors and mentorship. You've had, one, two, or more, and so I think that that kind of lends into this last question for you. So feel free to go a little deeper on that and or answer from a different lens. But the question is, do you have any advice, lessons, tips for business owners and entrepreneurs?
Yes, absolutely. Number one, yes, you should have a mentor, at least one mentor, one or two, somebody you look up to that you can learn from, somebody you can also call for advice when you need advice. That's number one, is very important. Number two, if you're an entrepreneur or if you want to become an entrepreneur, you should be looking for a product or a service that actually serves others. So my philosophy is if you're looking for a shiny object, oh, I'm going to make a lot of money by doing that. Yes, you might be making a lot of money, but it's short sight, it's short. It's not something that is a long run thing. I feel that if you find a product, deliver a product or a service that truly helps other, money is a byproduct of that. It's going to come back to you regardless. But that should not be the main goal of your business, to make money. No, the main goal of your business should be that you have found something that helps others and contributes to others. That's number one. Number two, you have to love what you do. You have to be passionate about what you do. If you're not passionate about what you do, again, I feel, I mean, Bob Proctor was a famous Canadian businessman, unfortunately passed away. He told me I was interviewing him in Los Angeles for one of my films. Your Second 50 was the film. And at some point he said, if you love what you do, you're not working a day in your life. And I always remember that. I don't feel I'm working because I love what I do. Why would I not do what I love and contribute to society and to others? So that's very important. Number three or four, I can't remember what point I'm at, but you need to master the basics of selling. You need to understand the principles of sales, how to sell, what does it mean to sell, and learn the basics on how to communicate with people, how to learn better ways of communicating, and really understanding the psychology of selling is super important. And number four, number five, you have to stay physically fit and active and have a mindset geared towards success, resilience. It's super important, and persistence. There are times people say, never give up. I don't really agree with that, because there are times in business when you should give up. If you keep getting signals that you're on the wrong track, you should not be persisting. But if all the signs are that you're doing the right thing and you're passionate about it, and you know that you're serving you're filling a gap, you're serving a purpose, there is a need for what you do, then you should persist and you should learn how to do it better. And having a mentor or mentors is very important. Learning the basics of sales, super important as well. So this is kind of what I'd like to say without going too deep. These are the main things I'd like to share about that.
Thank you for sharing. So at the end here, is there anything in the conversation that we've had today that you want to go back to? Anything maybe that we missed that you want to touch on, and or any announcements that you have? The floor is yours before I let everybody know, or before we let everybody know where they can connect with you a little bit more online.
Well, I mean, the announcement I'd like to make, I'm really deep into that now, is on March 28th. We are doing a film screening event in Fort Langley. We booked a beautiful theater in Fort Langley, the Chief CPAS Theater. We are going to show our movie called on a scale of 1 to 10, which is our film on health and wellness, which has a huge segment in it that promotes a plant-based approach. I'd rather say veganism. There is always that debate. Should you say veganism? Should you talk about plant-based? I think we should not be afraid of using the word vegan. There are some people who might disagree, but that's my feeling. I'm not afraid to say vegan. So we have a big section promoting veganism in the film, where I interview Dr. Michael Clapper, Dr. Neil Barnard, Mimi Kirk, and some other leaders in the vegan space are in the movie. So we are doing that big event on March 28th. There will be speakers there. There will be clinics will be there, chiropractic, naturopathic clinic, anti-aging clinics, and so on. We'll have a big Q&A discussion after the film. And of course, I welcome you to come. You're my guest. Of course, you'd be invited. And I welcome anybody else who is interested to learn more. We have an Eventbrite page for the event, March 28th, on a scale of 1 to 10 is the title of the film. That is the most pressing thing on top of mind for me, because I'm really in the trenches marketing the event right now.
Absolutely. Well, perfect timing for you to be here with us. And so thank you for sharing. And everybody else, of course, there's a lot going on. You know, Laurent mentioned Citrus Pie. There's probably a lot of other different organizations and ways that you can get in touch with him, but we'll just give you one. And so you can find out online, bizwellstudio.com. That's BIZWELL studio. So bizwellstudio.com, and the same on Instagram at bizwellstudio. So Laurent, thank you for your time. Everybody who's with us live today, thank you for your time. Everybody who's listening on your own time, thank you for your time. This has been another episode of Edge Networking Canada with the founder of Bizwell Studio, Laurent Goldstein. Everybody, thank you for being here, and we'll catch you soon on another episode. Take care. Bye for now.
Thank you very much for what you do.